Hello and welcome to Cornish Walking Trails. Today we're going to tell you the story of a lady killer. In our video today we're going to start in Tremenheere Sculpture Garden, which is on the Saints' Way, walking up to this church, which is involved in our story today about a woman that killed. Tremenheere Sculpture Garden is near Cornwall in Penzance. It's a lovely place to enjoy a coffee with a view of St Michael's Mount. However, it is completely incidental to our story.
What you got?
I ate some of yours.
So I'm really nervous about filming this video today.
What is that?
I'm bricking it.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm worried that we're going to get slated for making this video. I think a lot of people will skip this part of the video.
Yeah, you're on number 3. 4 now.
Got a shed load of information to give to people as well.
I think you're getting your metaphors upside down.
I think I might have ruined it.
Oh, God. That's a really old joke. It's Greek, isn't it? No.
What's the point?
What's that one?
I'll film it.
Oh! Hello everybody. We're out today near Penzance. Just had a coffee in Tremenheere Sculpture Garden before we walk up to Ladykiller Church to tell you the story of a woman that killed. You fighting with a bramble, Andrew?
Rewilding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello. I haven't said hello.
You didn't say hello. Say hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. I can't even say hello, everybody.
Sack him! This is an old book written by Wilkie Collins, originally printed in 1851, and then a second edition was printed in 1861. This is the 1861 version. He came here before the railway hit here, so it's rambles beyond railways. And he came towards Penzance and he was fascinated by the local folklore and the superstitions that the people believed in. And on that subject, he says, another and more remarkable instance of a superstition prevailing among the least educated classes of the people was communicated to me by the same informant. So he's obviously spoken to this chap beforehand. It's actually a doctor, a surgeon, a Mr. Richard Moyle that told him this story. So when he visited in 1851 and this story was relayed to him, it was only 30 years beforehand that this incident, 31 years that this incident had taken place. So it was still in living memory. The story goes, a small farmer living in one of the most western districts of the county died some years back and was supposed at the time to be English cholera. A few weeks after his decease, that's the farmer, his wife married again. This circumstance excited some attention in the neighbourhood. It was remembered that the woman had lived on very bad terms with her late husband, that she had on many occasions exhibited strong symptoms of possessing a very vindictive temper, and that during the farmer's lifetime she had openly manifested rather more than a platonic preference for a man whom she subsequently married. Suspicion was generally excited. People began to doubt whether the first husband had died fairly. At length the proper order was applied for and his body was disinterred. On examination, enough arsenic to have poisoned 3 men was found in his stomach. The wife was accused of murdering him, was tried, convicted on the clearest evidence, and hanged.
That's a true story, is it?
Yeah.
But he doesn't give any names in that, does he?
No.
No.
No, so we had to dig a bit more, didn't we?
And you said that he was told that story by a guy called Moyle.
Yes.
And he was
involved in examining the body after it was disinterred.
Right.
And he was the one that reported about the arsenic being in the man's stomach, the farmer's stomach.
So he was clearly speaking to someone that was there and knew of the circumstances, and this was the story that he given to Wilkie Collins. Yeah.
Yeah.
If just as an aside, that Wilkie Collins book, if you get a chance to pick up a copy of that and you're into Cornwall and visiting Cornwall and the history and that type of thing, it's an excellent book.
Yeah.
He did it as a walking tour, didn't he?
Yes. The one thing I would say about his account, because we've read one or two accounts of this story because we found out who it is, he's obviously a novelist. He was a novelist at the time, so maybe there is a little bit of dramatic license in this account, which we'll go into in more detail as we head towards Ludgvan Church.
Bit of exaggeration.
Maybe.
Do you think he wrote the first copy out and he sent it into the publisher and the publisher said he needs to pep it up a bit? So we're walking up towards Ludgvan Church. We're actually on the St Michael's Way at the moment, which is quite a popular footpath to walk. It's about 11 miles and it goes from coast to coast. It goes from Lelance over towards St Ives on the north coast, over to St Michael's Mount on the south coast near Marazion. And
the farm was somewhere around here. So she may well have walked this route between Ludgvan, going through Golval into Penzance. Now getting to Penzance is quite important because there is an account of somebody in Penzance actually selling her some arsenic on the grounds that they had an infestation of rats. Some of the accounts have said that there was no evidence to support that where they lived had any rats at all, which gave grounds for the premeditation for the murder.
So the lady at the centre of our story is a young lady, and she's called Sarah Polgreen or Polgrain. There's a number of different possible spellings for the surname, and she was convicted and she was executed in 1820. It's thought that she was in her mid to late 30s at that stage. Some dates have been given that she was 37. And she'd been married to this chap who's called Henry, and been married for 9 years. The other thing I forgot to mention, I did find out that her maiden name, so her birth name, the surname was Treman. Treman, but quite often in Cornwall it would be Tremaine
or Tremen, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and we've just come from
Tremenheere.
So there's different ways that surname could have changed over the years. Isn't there?
Just like the Polgrain.
But I've done quite a lot of digging. I've looked at sort of lots of registers online, and I can't see a record of her birth, and that is important because that will come into play later on in the video. I must film this there because I think some of this hasn't changed in 220 years of the building now. I'm pretty sure that would have been here at that time, and there's one behind these trees which is derelict. I'm going to film that as well.
Have a little sneaky film.
I said this path is a popular path and it's pretty much a main route to Penzance, and if she was out buying arsenic, this is probably the route she would have used to go home, isn't it?
It's extraordinary, isn't it? I think that's the bit that really sends a tingle down my spine. The thought that we could be walking in the footsteps of a murderess. So we have a how, arsenic. We have a when, 1820. I was meant to be at the dinner table. She'd mixed, allegedly in her confession, she said she'd mixed the arsenic in a little bit of butter, spread it on a piece of bread and gave it to her husband. And we have the motive, which was to get out of the marriage and be with her lover. So we have another old book with us today, and this one gives us a lot more detail about the execution itself. So let's just read that to you a moment. This book, beautiful book, as you can see, it was written by Robert Hunt, and it's a collection of superstitions, stories, folklores, traditional solutions to ailments. It's amazing. He gathered as much information about the West Country as he possibly could. And one of the stories in here is about Sarah Polgreen, although he doesn't actually name her yet again. Oh, he does. This is actually where I got it wrong. If we look here, this is where he names her as Sarah Polgrain. So this is one of the 3 spellings of her surname that we've come across. So it says here, the execution and wedding. A woman who'd lived in Ludgvan was executed at Bodmin for the murder of her husband, which we've already established. Robert Hunt at the time was staying in Penzance, and he was with his landlady, and he said, "Oh, looks like it's going to rain," to which the landlady responded, "It's all owing to Sarah Polgrain." "Sarah Polgrain?" said Robert Hunt, "and who is she?" So once the lady had given you the account that we've already described, he went on to say that this was the interesting bit. She said that Sarah had begged that Yorkshire Jack, who is meant to have been her lover, might accompany her to the scaffold when she was led forth to execution. This was granted, and on the dreadful morning there stood this unholy pair, the fatal beam on which the woman's body was in a few minutes to swing, before them. They kissed each other, and whispered words passed between them. The executioner intimated that the moment of execution had arrived, and that they must part. Sarah Polgrain, looking earnestly into the man's eyes, said, "Will you?" Yorkshire Jack replied, "I will," and they separated. The man retired amongst the crowd. The woman was soon a dead corpse, pendulating in the wind. So there's obviously a bit of dramatic license there, but you get the picture that this is the man that she'd fallen in love with, or had a close relationship with, which might have helped her or stimulate. That was her motive for maybe killing her husband, so that she could get out of an unhappy marriage and be with the man she loved.
First view of the church spire. That's where we're heading.
It's really eerie. It's now starting to spit and spot with rain. St Michael's Mount is a faint shimmer, a ghostly apparition in the bay. What a perfect day to be telling you the story of a murderess.
Come to sunny Ludgvan, you said.
No, that old chestnut.
Cornwall in the summertime.
Oh, it's been like this all summer, isn't it?
Can't beat it, can you?
Oh, yeah.
Just bring my suntan lotion.
The last we heard of Yorkshire Jack was that he said, "I will," to Sarah Polgrain as she was executed for her crime. The book goes on to say that years passed on, Yorkshire Jack was never the same man as before. His whole bearing was altered. His bold, his dashing air deserted him. He walked, or rather wandered, slowly about the streets of the town or the lanes of the country. He constantly moved his head from side to side, looking over his shoulder as if he was being followed. The stout man became thin, his ruddy cheeks more pale, and his eyes sunken. At length he disappeared, and it was discovered, for Yorkshire Jack had made a confidant of some Ludgvan man, that he had pledged himself, living or dead, to become the husband of Sarah Polgrain after the lapse of years. To escape, if possible, from himself, Jack had gone to sea in the merchant service. When the period had arrived, his holy promise was to be fulfilled. Yorkshire Jack was returning from the Mediterranean in a fruit ship. He was met by the devil and Sarah Polgrain far out at sea beyond Land's End. Jack would not accompany them willingly, so they followed the ship for days, during all which time the ship was involved in a great storm. Eventually Jack was washed from the deck by such a wave as the oldest sailor had never seen, and presently, amidst loud thunders and flashing lightning, riding as it were on black clouds, three figures were seen passing onward. These were the devil, Sarah Polgrain, and Yorkshire Jack. And this was the cause of the storm. So this was the account given to Robert Hunt by his landlady, and she goes on to say, "It was all true, you know."
That's a good story, isn't it?
It is a fascinating story. So Yorkshire Jack, it would appear, had promised to either kill himself to be with Sarah Polgrain whilst they're on the scaffold, or something like that, so that they could be united in death. And it looks as though he couldn't bring himself to do it, doesn't it?
All we know of this character is that he was called Yorkshire Jack. There's no other clues. There's nothing else to suggest what he was called, is there? So it kind of the trail of trying to find them with modern methods, looking on the internet, it's not there anymore, is it?
No.
The other thing I thought was interesting with that was, have you tried sailing on a fruit boat?
I know. It throws me every time I read that. Let's go in the church now and we'll have a look for some more evidence. What are you hoping to find in here then, Andrew?
Well, it's two things really. So we know that Sarah and Henry were married here, and that was, I think, in 1811. So there is a record of that. I just wanted to come and have a little look. But more importantly, Henry is supposed to be buried in the churchyard. So
this is where he was exhumed?
Yeah, so I'm basically trying to see if we can find the grave. They sometimes have a little book here which gives you a map of the graveyard, don't they? So I'll have a look and see if there's anything under the name of Polgrain.
Okay.
You know.
Oh, no. Monumental inscriptions got to be in here. Should we have a quick look? Okay. So we've got a plan of the graveyard.
Brilliant, yeah.
And
so we're looking for
list of graves.
Polgrain, isn't
look,
it?
It's in alphabetical.
Okay.
It's in alphabetical, Andrew. It's got to be on here somewhere. Or he will be. It's him that we're looking for. Polgrain.
Polgrain, yeah.
Look, number 22.
Monument number 22. Right.
Number 22. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This one.
It's on there, is it?
Oh, should we go and have a look?
Cool.
So hang on, let's just get our bearings. So that's the front door. So going up and around.
Should we see if we can find it?
Should we take a photo of that a minute?
Yeah, let's see if we can find it.
Okay. Monument 22 we're looking for, the Polgrain grave. That's the bell tower, 8, 9, 10. That's over here.
Corner of the tower's here.
Presumably, number 11 is the long one over here. It's as this wall comes in. 1, 2. It should be here. It should be here. Yeah.
You found it?
I found it. Caroline. What? Is that right? Wife of James Polgrain. I thought we said he was Henry.
Ooh. Well, and also, yeah, couldn't be his wife, could it? Unless he, because she was called Sarah and she wasn't.
1843. This is not the right grave.
Oh, what's the date?
1843.
Where's it set at? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it may be a relative.
Could be a relative then.
So does that
was that the right one? Just check your.
There was only 2 on
check
there.
the photo here in a minute.
Sure. Yeah, it's our mistake. We got overexcited in the church. So Polgrain, Caroline and James. She died in 1843 at the age of 41. So it's not the right people.
Okay, so it's the right surname.
Correct surname.
Not
wrong date.
Right.
Maybe a relative. Who knows? We don't know.
So have you got that list there?
There are no other Polgrains.
Oh, okay, so it's definitely not there.
Polgrain.
Right.
No, she wouldn't have been buried in the churchyard, would she? Because she was executed at Bodmin Jail, and they just put them in the ground with very little ceremony up there. If he was disinterred, did he get reburied? It's a wonderful old pamphlet. It's put together by Edith Martin of the WI in 1937. Do you know Cornwall? It's just a collection of extraordinary facts, really. Included in this book is a list of the executions in Cornwall from 1785 to 1882. It's on page 2, and here we have, on the 12th of August, Sarah Polgrain, aged 37, for the murder of her husband.
So it's recorded.
Grim, isn't it?
Did I tell you that this churchyard is supposed to be haunted by Sarah?
Yeah, it's the next part of the story, really, isn't it? On stormy nights, it's said that Sarah Polgrain visits this churchyard in her white shroud with a bruised neck, and she frantically digs in imitation of the people that dug up her husband. Anybody that was living at the time was absolutely terrified to come in the churchyard in the dark. And no, I'm not coming back tonight.
That's my next question. There's a couple of things with that. If everybody was scared and they wouldn't come in here because they thought that she was haunting it, is that like a sign of a guilty conscience that they'd said she'd done it? You know, they dobbed her in effectively.
Yeah, the rumour mill.
It was their evidence, it was their rumours that ultimately caused her to be convicted and to be executed, isn't it? So were they scared that she was going to come back and have some sort of vengeance?
It is a time when you would believe in that sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, quite likely. And don't go near the church.
No. So we can't find Henry's grave.
No.
And you're right, they exhumed the body, didn't they? Because they had to have an inquest, they had to have a look at, re-examine the body, isn't it? That's how they found this evidence of the arsenic. So I'm pretty sure he must have been reburied. However, when they first buried him, the suggestion was he died of cholera, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So would they have had an area in the churchyard where they put cholera victims? Perhaps it would have been further away from the main church area. It might not even been recorded, it might just been a mass cholera grave.
Quite possibly. Yeah, but we'll never know because that's not in that record in
No.
the church. We can just go and check if you like.
So we had a little look back in the church, but we couldn't find anything in the church to tell us if it was a cholera grave. If you know any different, then put it in the comments.
So a little bit disappointing that we can't find where the grave of Henry Polgreen was. Presumably Sarah Polgreen, like a lot of the victims or executed at Bodmin Jail, were well, they weren't buried with much sanctity, shall we say. They were kind of just plonked in the ground outside the walls from what we can ascertain. So there won't be a memorial to her either. So we've covered Sarah's story and we've told you what happened to Yorkshire Jack. There is another interesting element. There is a ripple, if you like, that went through the community. We're talking about a time when churches used to earn money from attracting people to come and visit, where they would display relics or have something special. This little village, this little hamlet, had a very special holy well. Go on then, Mr. Cynical.
We still do it today, making money from tourists.
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, it's on St Michael's Way.
Yes.
It's part of the Cornish Celtic Way, and a lot of pilgrims will walk this, and it's quite a popular walk, isn't it? And it's on that route. You can even have your
book stamped
done,
can't you?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So it kind of carries on that tradition, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So let's just briefly tell you the story of Ludgnan Holy Well and the ripples in the community that this murder unleashed.
So we're going back to that popular romances of the west of England, is that what it's called?
Yes, by Robert Hunt. But it's a different edition, isn't it? It was reprinted and it was just like almost rehashed,
Anyway,
wasn't it?
it says the Well of St Ludgvan.
Yes.
Right, and this is quite ironic because it's raining today. So St Ludgvan, right, the reason that this is famed effectively was that St Ludgvan, he found the holy well. And it says in here, it says the saint prayed over the dry earth which was beneath him as he knelt on the church stile. His prayer was for water, and presently a most beautiful crystal stream welled up from below. The holy man prayed on, and then, to try the virtues of the water, he washed his eyes. They were rendered at once more powerful, so penetrating, indeed, as to enable him to see microscopic objects.
Lucky him.
Yeah. The saint prayed again, and then he drank of the water. He discovered that his powers of utterance were greatly improved. His tongue formed words with scarcely any effort of his will.
Ironically.
The saint now prayed that all children baptized in the waters of this well might be protected against the hangman and his hempen cord. And an angel from heaven came down into the water and promised the saint that his prayers should be granted. Now this is important because we're talking about Sarah Polgreen, who was executed for murdering her husband, and she is from this parish allegedly. Now if she was from this parish, there's every chance that she would have been baptised here. And if she was baptised here, this legend, which attracted tourists who came here to partake of the well, and also their revenue from selling the water to other churches so that the children could be baptised in holy water, which meant they would never be hung, was completely thrown out.
It's threatened.
It's threatened, isn't it? So
huge problem.
This was a problem in the community.
That's really interesting. It's specific to hempen cord and not silk cord.
Yeah, they make a point of actually specifying that. I don't know. That
I didn't
it's one of its
even
powers.
know. I didn't even know there was a difference. Who would be entitled to a silk cord over a hemp? How did that work?
But again, it came back to what Wilkie Collins was talking about the Cornish people being very superstitious. It was obviously really important back then that when a child was baptised, that their parents knew that they were protected. They weren't going to be hanged, effectively. They would avoid the hangman's rope.
So it became very important to the community to continue the revenue stream from tourism, that they had to dispel this myth that she was baptised here. And they searched and searched and searched for the record of her baptism, and eventually they found it, not in this church vestry but somewhere else, to prove that she wasn't baptised here. But none of our stories or accounts say where she was baptised.
No, and you'd think now, in this modern age with the internet and being able to find records, and all these records have been brought together
online.
in local record libraries as well, I can't seem to find any record as such of Sarah's birth. Now, there was a book I was reading, which was a more modern book, and they don't quote the source, but they did suggest that she was born, now I believe she was born in Golville. I think that was the suggestion, which is the next parish over.
So the inference is she was baptised in Golville rather than Ludgvan, using Golville's well instead of Ludgvan's well. So that's how they got around it, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Come on then, we've got to have a quick look for the well.
Yeah, this weather isn't playing ball. It's going to have a little look. So there was a clue in what I read out there. It said he knelt by the church stile, didn't he? So by the church. Let's see if we can find a stile.
Find an old granite stile somewhere.
A well.
Do we know what era the saint was around though?
Well, most of them were about 5th century, I think.
Oh crumbs, we're looking for a really old stile then, Andrew.
Right, I know this won't go in the video because it's way too long.
Right.
Okay, but I'm looking at the pinnacles on the tower.
Yeah.
Because the story was... Right, I can do this quickly. Go on, film me. I can do this really quickly.
Go on then.
Okay, so the story goes that during a church baptism service, the vicar was baptising the baby. He was going through the whole service, and as he was going through, every time he mentioned the word Jesus or Saviour, the baby uttered the devil's name. Now, the vicar knew that the baby had become possessed, and the only way he could protect the baby was basically to remove the devil from the baby. So he had quite a battle with this, and eventually he managed to remove the demon from the child. Now, as part of this process, apparently, the holy well lost some of its power. It lost the power of microscopic sight, and it lost the power over words, which we explained earlier. Okay. However, the story about avoiding the hangman's rope
was retained.
And apparently he had a fight on his hands to remove the devil. The devil climbed up the tower of the church, and as he banished him, the devil managed to remove the pinnacle from the church tower.
Oh,
so I'm just going to see how many pinnacles are up there.
Let's go and look.
And let's have a little look.
Let's go. Ah.
There's only 2 pinnacles up there.
Yeah, you're at the wrong angle, darling.
Ah.
I think it's got 4.
Oh, I can see 3 now. It's true. There's only 3 pinnacles on the tower, Sarah.
I'm going to put the clip in from when we filmed it back down yonder.
Oh, okay.
We're at 4.
But...
Good story there.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the style.
Right, yes.
I hope you guys are keeping up with us. So we're now looking for the style where the saint, he prayed and the holy well emerged from the ground. So we've been all the way around the circumference of this church.
Can't find any
No
style,
style.
can we? So there's obviously old crosses here, isn't there? It's actually old masonry there as well. Yeah, they're old, aren't they?
Isn't it?
Yeah, fantastic,
Wow.
aren't they?
Yeah.
And this one as well. Do you see that one there?
No, maybe from a previous church or building.
So this has obviously been collected, hasn't it? And they obviously knew it was important, and they've made a gateway, haven't they? But there is no style anymore, and I should confess at this stage that the well is lost. It's a lost well.
Do you want to wipe your glasses off? Can you see anything?
It's a bit wet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I just ask you, with everything that we've read a lot
Yes.
about this, do you think that Sarah actually did this?
Gosh, well, I think there's a lot of doubt, because I don't think that a confession that is given in custody is as reliable as a confession would normally be. If she had done it, I don't know. I think she found herself in a position where people were ganging up against her, the whole community was against her, and maybe pressure was brought to bear and she could see no way out. So, did she buy arsenic? There seems to be proof that she did. Did she have a rat infestation? They're saying she didn't. Did she give him the arsenic? Well, who knows? I think today there would have been a lot of questions asked and maybe a different outcome.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think, personally, that they've introduced this concept of Yorkshire Jack, right?
Yeah.
She was in a loveless marriage, by the sounds of it.
Yes.
She was obviously deeply unhappy. We don't know what was going on in that marriage, do we?
No.
He might have been abusive to her. We just don't know. But obviously, if this character of Yorkshire Jack is true, there is
Yeah.
no real evidence of that. It's more of a legend, isn't it? But there could be some coercion. You know, we
Yes.
will let's
Conspiracy.
rid yourself of your husband. It could have been that they both were guilty of it.
Yeah.
And that Yorkshire Jack might have avoided the hangman's noose.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. You're
I don't
right.
know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
possibly. Who knows?
Who knows?
The one thing I would come back at with that,
Yeah.
very few women kill.
Yes. Yes.
And it's usually under extreme circumstances. And I think it comes back to that thing that we birth, we nurture, we bring up children. It's men that go to war and kill each other. So a woman that kills is always so unusual.
Yeah, I find the whole story is really interesting, and
Yeah.
nobody has really been able to put any conclusive proof together of whether Sarah did do this or not.
And probably never will be able to know.
No. Anyway, if you know more, let us know, put it in the comments. Do us a favour, if you've enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up. Always helps with the YouTube algorithm. And if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing.
Indeed.
Go on, hit that button. There's no cost or anything involved with subscribing, but it does help us out.
So until next time, we will say goodbye for now. Bye!
Bye! Thank you, Chris.